Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the Gospel Culture Podcast. After a lengthy hiatus, I think about 5 or 6 weeks, we're back, and I'm joined by Tyler Margeson for another wide-ranging conversation, including, let me warn you, a few minutes where we discussed the coronavirus. So let me inform you that we do not consider ourselves experts in any way about the coronavirus, COVID-19, or pretend to understand how this is all unfolding day by day. As I just saw last night that the NBA suspended games. So developing situation, whatever we said, is just two idiots who are friends having a conversation together. FYI. All right, let's get into my conversation with Tyler right after this. Hey, Tyler.
Good afternoon, Benjamin.
So baseball season is almost here.
Yeah, that's right. We're in the spring training.
You
Right?
big baseball fan?
I want to be, but I'm not.
You're not.
I do not follow baseball all that much. I plan on watching more baseball this year for my son's sake.
Look at you.
So I'm sacrificing, laying down my life for my son. In that regard.
And this is a Pirates thing, right?
Yeah, well, we're mainly a
Sad.
Pittsburgh.
It's sad.
Well, it's
That's
gonna
not
be
a
sad.
Yeah, it's
based
not a
on
good
their-
way to get into watching baseball.
I don't know much about baseball, but I know that the Pirates are not renowned for their ability
Of being good.
Yeah.
So I've wanted to be a baseball fan for many
Yeah.
years.
Well, there's a nostalgia to it.
Yeah.
It's like as an American, you respect it at least.
I want to be able to. For some reason, I feel like I would feel like a better human being if I was able to genuinely say, I'm a real big baseball fan.
Right. A more dedicated Christian, a greater
Yeah.
patriot.
Yeah, it's like it says I'm a person of depth, real
Yeah,
depth.
that's right. Because it's so boring to watch.
Yeah. So I've tried for years, and I've come to the conclusion it's not happening.
Well, there's just so many games. I mean, you look at the
That's true.
schedule, it's like a third of the games are televised, and of the ones that are, I can't watch baseball at, Wednesday afternoon at 1:00.
Yeah.
Or a doubleheader.
May I add a caveat? I love going to baseball games.
See, that's even worse for me.
Yeah. And I've been to a number of stadiums.
So
I
why do you
love
love it?
going to
What do you
Citizens
love
Bank
about it?
Park. On a beautiful day, I was just there last year watching the Phillies, the sun shining, eating cheesesteaks, beautiful manicured grass.
See, for me, it's
Such a pleasant way to spend 3 hours.
I guess
If
all
I'm
the
there,
baseball games
You
I've
can
gone to.
jeer and heckle.
That's something you really look forward to. It's like,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't
Yeah, I'm a
wait
big
to get
heckler.
down there and jeer at these guys.
Yeah, I've been like, I haven't jeered for a while.
Well, they make millions of dollars to play a game. I think they can handle it. But,
No, going with some buddies to a
Yeah.
baseball game. That's a nice way to spend a summer day.
See, for me, it's like you're stuck in an uncomfortable seat in the blazing hot sun. There's a dirty bathroom that you got to wait in line for. You have to pay a lot of money to get any kind of, like, here's $15. Like,
Delicious ballpark food.
here's a small hot dog that you just paid $15 U.S.
Where
currency
is this?
for.
This sounds like a nightmare. Where is this baseball stadium?
Well, even like going to like the Senators games, like for like a
Well,
free
no, that's
night.
not fun.
Well, there's never a good seat. You're just baking in the sun.
So
don't
I
know.
draw the line when it comes to my level of fun at Major League Baseball. The AA game, not so much.
That's your local team.
I know. I'm trying.
The only baseball
If my
games,
6-year-old son gets into it, maybe I
Yeah.
will.
Well, and I will say, I will add the caveat. I genuinely love going to watch Everett play. My son, my oldest
well,
son.
that's yeah.
Yeah, I
That's incredible.
because the shenanigans of a young person's baseball team is enough to keep you occupied outside of when they actually get a good hit or pitch or.
If Isaac or Ellen, I mean, like little
Yeah.
boy sports, I'm all in.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
That is
riveting.
very enjoyable. But yeah, just watching it, it's like, all right, well, we're dedicated now for the next 3 hours with a total of, 5 minutes, it seems, of actual gameplay. The rest of it's them adjusting their gloves and their hat and looking at each other and communicating via signs. And
well, I'm 43, so part of the joy of growing older is at some point you just start figuring out more about who you are. And I'm just not going to watch baseball games on TV.
My brother's a huge baseball fan, and he says
he's young yet.
Well, the downtime is what he likes because it gives you time. He says, you can talk to people and interact, and that's part of that's part of the niceness of it, or the attraction, I guess.
All right, but baseball season isn't here quite yet.
No, not yet.
But what is here is COVID-19.
We're going to call it COVID? I think that's appropriate.
I think so. The coronavirus.
Well,
but it's a coronavirus.
Right. It's been around. The coronavirus has been identified, in the 60s? Something like that?
I don't know. Sounds like you're an expert.
I've read a couple things.
Yeah, you probably saw some headlines.
In all seriousness, from a public safety standpoint, we've been getting updates from our emergency management directors and our chief of police and things like that.
Right, as a police officer, what have you seen?
Well, they've just been sending us stuff about known cases in Pennsylvania, where they located, steps you can take, plans of action that they have as far as if there is some kind of pandemic.
Okay. Are you encountering people that are afraid?
No, not that they've verbalized to me.
Yeah, but you have encountered our local Costco running out of toilet paper.
That's affected me personally.
Yeah.
COVID-19 has affected me personally because we're
COVID-19 got all up in your feelings.
It did. Well, so we genuinely need toilet paper, and we normally buy the Charmin Soft Touch from Costco.
Nothing else will do.
We tried the strong. It was too rough. And it's we can't believe it. It's like, why toilet paper? It's like I'm gonna be quarantined to my house. Like for me, I'm gonna get water, gun ammunition, and food.
Yeah.
But toilet paper, it's like apparently that's where it's at.
I guess so. I think we're running a little low. I noticed yesterday. Now I'm concerned. I haven't even tried to buy toilet paper yet.
I think my buddy at work, he had to buy it at 7-Eleven and pay like $18 for 5 rolls.
Have you busted anybody selling black market toilet paper in the city of Harrisburg?
Oh, man, I got that Charmin Ultra Soft.
You got the good stuff, baby.
I know, but I would imagine that based on the scarcity, there will be a
robust black market.
That's right.
The mafia will be
the dark
driving
web.
in Cadillacs with trunks full of toilet paper.
The dark web is a flood with bootleg toilet paper right now.
Yeah. So what do you make of all this? Everything's shutting down.
Yeah. Events being canceled.
I've never seen anything like this. Travel disrupted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting based on statistically how mild the actual virus is. But I guess you have the novel fear of a foreign virus, and now they're tracking how it's infiltrating into the country and who has it, and
yeah.
But we were just talking about what this 3%, I think, is where it's sitting.
Something like that of the mortality rate.
Yeah. Which we did a little research. Do you got the numbers there for the regular flu? So influenza.
I do. So I saw a number here that says the flu kills up to 646,000 people worldwide each year.
That's on the high end. What's the low end?
Yeah, low end was 291,000.
So and what was the coronavirus death toll?
Right now we have 4,590 deaths.
So it's not even close. We're talking orders of magnitude higher just for the regular flu, which does not cause a pandemic reaction where, toilet paper is sold out.
Did you ever have the flu? Like the real flu?
I don't think so.
I did.
I've heard it's awful.
About 4 years ago. I
remember that.
It was it's unbelievable. I was completely incapacitated. Now, Kate, my wife, would argue that I'm incapacitated by the slightest cold. But I was
Your humors
for
are
about
out of
10 days.
yeah.
For about 10 days, I could not move or think.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. It was unbelievable.
I've heard that. Like you get up to go to the bathroom. It's like, all right, now I have to sleep for the next 12 hours.
That's right. It's like an accomplishment.
Yeah, I've heard that. But it's interesting.
This virus isn't like that, though.
No, I guess most
very
people
different
have
than the
very
flu.
mild symptoms, and then
you might not even know you have it.
Exactly.
except for older people.
The elderly, those with a predisposition to respiratory illness, things like that, like existing medical conditions.
Yeah. There's a little bit, I was thinking today, it's a little bit, if you really sit down and think for a sec, it's a little bit disturbing to my way of thinking how that's sort of discounted a little bit, though, by people like you and I who are trying to say, this is not as big a deal.
Sure.
But it's like, it's just the old people. It's
just the sickly.
It's just if you're 60 and over. That's all.
The sickly
Everyone
and the
else
elderly.
is fine. So this isn't a big deal.
That's true.
It's just all of the people you love that
Well,
are older.
I think we're
are
trying
in
to do
jeopardy.
two things. We're trying to speak into the fear that fuels this irrational behavior, like buying up toilet paper. But as a Christian, how do we respond to that? So, we're told to not be fearful, right? To be anxious about nothing.
Again and again. Fear
Right.
not.
Right.
Do not be anxious.
So, that would be my encouragement. I'm sure there were pandemics throughout history that the Christian response should be necessarily we need to care for those who are ailing and sick, the lowly,
Mm-hmm.
And not be fearful. As best we can.
So you would advocate not to panic.
That would be my
That's a good.
my advice.
Yeah.
Please don't buy toilet paper. You don't need it. There are families like us that need it and now
Okay,
can't
this is
get
the
it.
public service announcement portion.
Please stop buying toilet paper.
Help a person like me.
I can imagine one of those infomercials for just 35 cents a day.
You can provide the good stuff.
Yeah, or instead of that, it's like, please stop buying toilet paper. And then there's this sad family that is reaching for the toilet roll and it's empty.
Or it just has the one,
There's the
sheet,
one
the one dangling ragged sheet
that won't do anything.
No, that's
It's already
completely
shredded,
unusable.
coated in the glue that they use to attach
They
it to the
probably,
roll.
and I'm as I think about it, they probably do that on purpose because if you can imagine, multiply that one sheet, you just can't detach. It's probably a special way, fixed in a special way that it tears off. And if you multiply that out times the millions,
economies of scale,
I'm telling you,
they're making millions.
There's a lot of scam going on
this
here.
Big Charmin is taking us down.
Big teepee.
The big toilet.
Their big teepee lobby. Somebody is cleaning up on this.
I can imagine. Can you
and
imagine?
can you prove that this wasn't started by the TP lobby?
That is, we're going down the rabbit hole now.
I'm saying.
The evidence is there.
How connected are they to China?
Well, can you imagine being the CEO of a toilet paper company at this point? You're just kind of humming along. It's a product that everybody needs.
Right.
You've got good sales.
It's a growth industry,
and then
actually.
all of a sudden, you are in high demand to the point where you can't even meet demand levels, and production goes through the roof.
It's a banner year,
that's
people.
What I mean, invest in. If you're a stock
TP
broker,
stocks are probably really blowing up right
now. The market's tanking, except for Procter and Gamble that owns I'm sure a couple of toilet paper companies, and they're sore. But I guess it's the same for bottled water, rubbing alcohol, hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Well, I agree that it's not a good idea to be afraid.
No.
I mean, the reaction seems outsized to me at first glance. I mean, the amount of cancellations. We're working on an announcement at our church in order to inform folks about how the pastors are thinking about how we handle this this whole thing. I mean, there's churches that are not going to have services. There's people are moving away from shared communion,
the dipping of the bread and things like that.
Or even just having it all together in one bowl, and so you're reaching your hand in.
Oh, right.
Sort of thing. So people want to know that you're thinking about it.
Right.
And it matters. But the effect it's having is not actually that significant. It's very significant if you got it or a loved one has it and, someone has died.
Or if you
not
even
discounting
lost somebody,
that. But it's just amazing to watch this. I just have never seen anything like this in my lifetime.
No, I can't recall a time where there's been such a strong response to some kind of sickness that's spreading.
I think the best policy in worrisome times, because this is not the only troubling news story in the last few years. It seems like there's always one. I mean, who's really winning through all of this is the news organizations.
Sure.
I mean, the ratings are through the roof.
Sure, fear.
The
always
clicks are at an
stokes-
all-time high.
Yeah, it always stokes.
I have
response.
Googled this so many times and clicked on so many different
I
stories.
can't imagine.
The news is licking their chops
Yeah.
at a story like this because things that are scary like this, they sell.
Right.
They get clicks, they get likes, they get shares.
Yeah. War, famine, disease, scandal. It's a slow news cycle when, they're covering actual, news events. But when there's just this mass, pandemic of something like this, they can just run with it.
Yeah. I think in any situation that we can be tempted to have anxiety or fear about very real problems. I'm not saying there's no problem here.
Yeah. It's a genuine disease. Genuinely, people are dying from it. It's real.
I think in every situation, Philippians 4 is appropriate to apply. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone."
Mm-hmm.
That right there is just wonderful. If we'd all listen to that exhortation, let your reasonableness be known to everyone. Why are we reasonable? Because the Lord is at hand.
Yeah.
The Lord who's sovereign over every virus. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So wonderfully, God gives us a prescription when we're experiencing anxiety.
Right. Well, and if you look at the context in which Paul wrote this, he's in prison as he writes this. So, I mean, he's not, in a good place when he's telling people, don't be anxious about everything. It's like, no, I'm in prison for sharing the gospel right now.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we can do this. Like, God's peace can be available to you.
Yeah. Isn't that wonderful to know?
Absolutely.
One thing that I've been wanting to talk to you for a while, because you are a musician, and you're a worship leader at Living Hope.
Yeah.
And you think about these sorts of things, as do I, is the idea of how the songs that we sing actually shape the way we think, or they shape the way that we're formed spiritually even.
Yeah.
I would suggest. Would you agree with that idea?
Absolutely. I would say music in general opens up an emotional response to what is being communicated lyrically in a way that is different. And I know for me, song in particular gives language to feelings that I might not be able to express very well yet. So if especially as a young person, working through maturing, especially maturing as a young Christian, and then having a song come along that gives you not only the emotional expression of singing it, but also a lyrical explanation or
vocabulary.
Yeah, absolutely. A lyrical vocabulary for an experience or for something that you're working through or thinking through.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how much the music that we listen to and sing has an effect
absolutely.
on our lives. Yeah. When I was young, I mean, when I was back in the 80s, when I was growing up in a pretty strict Christian home, there was a lot of Petra and David Meese.
My first CD compact disc was God Fixation? It was one of their later albums.
So that's John Schlitt Petra.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm a Greg X. Volz guy. It's sort of like a Van Halen. Roth Halen, yes. Hagar Halen.
Van Hagar.
No.
I'm not Van Hagar.
No, Van Hagar's not for me. But so I didn't really pay attention to a lot of that. I mean, some of the music was pleasant to me, especially Phil Keaggy. I loved Phil Keaggy when I was a kid. But when I began to rebel, which I about 13, and say, I want to cast off the shackles of my restrictive home, my parents and their rules. Really, one of the conduits into that rebellion was music.
Yeah.
And the music I started to listen to, like Vanilla Ice.
Wow.
Yeah, really important.
I had MC Hammer on tape.
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Did you have MC Hammer?
No, I didn't. No, that was corny.
You weren't too legit to quit.
No, but I did start off on just your whatever pop music was around, but I quickly moved towards, I don't know what year it was. I was a young teenager when, for instance, Nirvana Nevermind came out. And boy, that album was perfect
Well, sure.
for an angry 14-year-old.
That's what it was. I mean, that's like where it was written from, and that's
With a
what it was
Sony
geared to.
Walkman with the bass boost turned on, the tape from the Wall music store that had the sticker. They'd replace it for free. And before they wised up, you could put that sticker on the plastic case so you could change any tape out. And now I should probably confess my sins, but but I that moved me into a world of more aggressive music, and I like Nirvana. I'm not actually criticizing them per se. There's things to criticize, I'm sure, but
right.
But I didn't even know what they were talking about. But there was enough I understood, and the tone and feel of the music really just it felt like they understood me, and that I had found a soundtrack for my life.
Yeah.
It really did become a kind of soundtrack. That
Absolutely.
and a bunch of other bands too.
Yeah, for those of us who, I mean, everybody I think to an extent enjoys some type of music, but I think there are those who are very distinctly drawn to finding a soundtrack for their life. Not only does music inform us, but we seek out music that applies to our circumstance or to our situation.
Yeah.
So I remember seasons where, I was longing to be in a relationship. And so what was I drawn to? It's like, well, I want a soundtrack that informs, the romantic aspect of
Jodeci.
life. And Jodeci. I was thinking more like Boys to Men.
Yeah.
Was huge for me. Like their album 2, I could probably still sing it from.
You want to do that right now?
All right, here we go.
All right, everybody.
I was young, Bob, and didn't have nowhere to run. No, so so I think it's like it's a two-way street. So I think I distinctly remember. It's almost I would almost think it was like a divine intervention. Like these albums would like land. Like you wouldn't be looking for anything, and all of a sudden, a piece of music would land in your lap. And like, whoa, I wasn't looking for this, but this is exactly what I needed right now.
Yeah.
And then other times where it's like I'm seeking stuff out that kind of fits where I'm at in my life right now. So, I really want a girlfriend, and so I'm going to be drawn. I'm going to listen to music about these romantic guys and how good they are at wooing women.
Oh, wow. Man,
you
were way more thought out than I was.
Well, look, I'm looking at this now as a 36-year-old man, at my young self, I think with more of a wise and understanding eye as to what was going on. I don't, if you would have asked me.
You're reinterpreting.
Well, I'd say at 12 years old, I don't think I'd be able to articulate, I really want a girlfriend, so I really like music about being in a relationship. You were just like,
me like girls.
Yeah, it's like, I like girls, and this music is about liking girls.
So I like this music.
Yeah. But I also think that when you have something that's excellent, it kind of opens the doorway to what's being communicated in that music in a way that is very unique and special. And so you get, I wasn't careful then, but I think even now as an adult, and we do this especially with the music that we pick for Sunday morning to be not to say wary, but to have not just mindlessly consume something because it's good,
right?
Because it does influence your thoughts, it does influence your spiritual state in a powerful way. To be mindful of, and this is true of all media, I would say, but for those who have ear for music in particular, that if you're not mindful and you're just just numbly consuming music because it sounds good, or you like the beat and the melody's great and they're gifted in what they do, that it could possibly conversely influence you.
Yeah, I think there was I hadn't thought much in the way that I'm thinking now about music and how it shapes and influences, when I was coming up.
Sure.
I ended up being into a lot of punk and industrial and all sorts of things.
Sure.
A lot of dark stuff, a lot of aggressive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just sounded like good music to me.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when I became a Christian at 27, things started to adjust for me.
Yeah.
Where there were certain albums that I would listen to, and I would find myself singing along with certain lyrics and realizing I do not agree with this lyric at all.
I don't think this is true.
And actually, this is blasphemous, for instance. I think of certain bands sadly really into that. really hated God.
Right,
And so it's like,
exactly.
well, I can't,
Anti-Christian.
like I found myself skipping over lines and things like that. And my relationship with my music started to change as my relationship with God radically changed in becoming a Christian.
Yeah. So I had a pretty good collection of what I thought was good music, and I would still probably like a lot of the bands that I had. I'm sure there was some
Hall & Oates.
Rich Girl, man, that just it slays me.
If I listed for you the amount of hits that Eddie Money had, you would be shocked. Eddie Money, 80s stud rocker.
See, I was still relatively young. I mean, I was born in '84.
I'm just saying, I'm not approving or disapproving. That's just a little aside. But I'm sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
So, and we were talking about this a little bit before, how things changed when you became a Christian, what you were just talking about as well.
Yeah.
I had a box of CDs. I loaded up all my secular CDs into a box when I became a Christian.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing. It was, and I think that my heart behind it was I want to be honoring in everything that I do to Jesus. And so
Sure.
This doesn't honor Jesus, at least not in a way that I can, as a young, immature Christian, can think about truth and beauty in a way that honors God, even outside of its direct declaration.
Yeah.
Like there's no nuance or
And you gave that box away.
I gave it to my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm following Jesus now. I just take this CD.
No
this
more
box of
Richard
CDs.
Marx for me.
I mean, it's just like Cake and Bush, and I mean, it wasn't even necessarily CDs that had foul language or were overtly anti-Christian or
you were zealous for the Lord.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. And so I remember as I matured as a Christian, I remember like finding the box and be like, I'm gonna put this one back in the rotation, or I was selective at first.
Yeah.
And it reminds me what Paul talks about the weaker brother. It's like I was the weaker brother at that point. So,
right.
My mom bore with me.
Yeah, I mean, I had an experience somewhat similar that I regret deeply, where I gathered in a moment of conviction, of wanting to really take my faith seriously. I packaged up all my CDs, which I had been collecting these CDs for a decade.
It's probably had
lots of special orders.
One-off stuff.
Back in the day, back in the 90s, you didn't like go on the internet and order a CD. You'd go to the music store,
Media Play, the wall
or what, and you'd order, and then they'd contact you when your CD came, and you go pick it up. So I had some great sort of rare, interesting stuff that would be really hard to
find. Even
it's
now.
Expensive.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. And I loaded all of that up, and I gave it to Salvation Army. And I regret it deeply because I would like to listen to some of those CDs now.
Yeah.
But at the time, I felt like this is what I need to do, because I'm feeling that I need to be more zealous about my choices when it comes to entertainment and what I fill my mind with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I imagine there's got to be some people that are listening to this that have gone through this experience.
Oh, I know several Christians who have had the same thing. It was almost like a rite of passage of 90s Christians to be like, you need to get rid of all your secular music.
Yeah.
And I think there was a push. I mean, maybe it was, I don't want to say it was malevolent, but there was a Christian music industry that was burgeoning and growing at the same time. And so I don't know what the connection was. It's like almost
big
like
CCM, smoke-filled rooms.
What's
They got to get these kids to get rid of the secular CDs and start buying more Michael W. Smith Go West.
Well, and it was crazy. I remember in our youth room, the youth room that we actually at different times went to, they had a big chart, and it must have been from CCM or something like that, but it listed popular secular bands at the time, and then it would like break down their style and like musical genre, and then it listed Christian bands.
Oh, that sounded like them.
That would be an equivalent taste almost musically,
Yeah.
but they were singing about Jesus, and so
they're like, if you like the Specials, you'll love Scalleluja.
Yeah, or it's like you like this is early before they went electronic, but you like I'm trying to think, you like Creed, which some would say earlier on was a Christian band. I mean, you can make that argument, but You know,
I don't want to make that argument.
You'll love Skillet, or stuff like that. It was like,
yeah.
Yeah, I remember you like Tool. Oh, well, you'll love Chevelle. And Chevelle,
that's right. Chevelle started off sort of as a Christian band.
Yeah. Well, Chevelle has some good tunes. I mean, I think
my brother's a huge Chevelle fan.
Yeah. I mean, not to say anything, and I'm not trying to say anything against Skillet or against Chevelle, but it was almost like
I will. How about I say some things?
They were marketed as,
especially against Skillet. I have a couple of words.
They were marketed as that they might not be like. Don't check out this band because they're good. Check out this band because you can replace your secular music with this Christian.
Just slide
version.
this right in.
It's like, well, why don't you just have an artist who makes good music?
Yeah.
And happens to be
wow,
a Christian.
What a crazy idea.
I know.
So I started listening to Christian music when I became a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I did not want to listen to Christian music before that, but not all Christian music. In fact, I was sort of happy I skipped over the 90s as a pagan because I heard a lot of 90s music and I'm not really digging it. There's a lot of my friends, like you, I would include you. You have a fondness for Audio Adrenaline or
I do, yeah,
things like that. That I can't come on the scene in the late like in the mid 2000s, something like that. And everyone's like, "This is it, man! Audio, like playing like or what Newsboys or whatever." Yeah. And I heard it, I just thought, "This sounds terrible to me."
It was a time and place.
It was a time and place. So, but it's beloved. It was like beloved songs from youth group, teenage years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Oh, you.
I skipped that whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, there were and it's interesting to me that now as an adult, there are still bands that I formed a love for in that time frame that were genuinely good artists.
Sure.
And genuinely good musicians and wrote genuinely good songs. And I think it took them time to realize that because there was such a culture of we have to listen to it because it's Christian music and we're Christians instead of, hey, we should listen to this because it's good music that honors Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that the good artists stood the test of time. I mean, there were like so many like just come and go.
Yeah.
They were a Christian band because we can't make it in the mainstream.
Yeah, that was an actual thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying Audio A didn't glorify Christ? Is that what I heard you? No, I'm just kidding. I'm enraging. All of my 30s and 40s friends that are listening to this they hate me right now.
Boiling.
I can't help it.
Well,
when I went away from the church in the early 90s, DC Talk was a rap group.
Yes.
And they were really bad.
Well, yeah.
And then I come back like 15 years later, and all of a sudden there's this mega worldwide superstar singing group.
Absolutely.
So strange.
Yeah.
I just remember Tearing Down the Wall of Segregation was one of their songs from like 89. And the video included large beefcake men in construction outfits pounding cinder block wall with sledgehammers.
I don't remember that. Yeah. I was 4.
It was hard. I couldn't watch it.
5 at the time.
And I was just a kid, but I turned away.
Look away. Yeah, well, I would say, I thought maybe you were going to say is that they weren't glorifying Christ. I was like, they haven't stood the test of time. It's like, yes, I still will not. I don't listen to Audio anymore.
Yeah, I thought they still make music.
Yeah, they have Michael Tate. Didn't he take over?
Is that
He's
right?
the lead singer.
The guy from DC Talk. The cross-pollination. It's unbelievable. Everybody probably lost their minds when that happened.
He went Newsboys.
Okay. It's all part of a piece for me.
Well,
it's I have trouble telling this apart.
They genuinely, so the bands that I think actually made good music and were genuine artists have progressed and stood the test of time. Like Andrew Peterson, when he first came out.
Oh, yeah.
Was a part of the CCM Christian music.
Yeah, mid-90s, right?
He was a part of Essential. And then...
anybody who's heard this podcast knows we love Andrew Peterson.
We do. But I think even if you read his book, he was genuinely concerned about being a good artist. So he wasn't necessarily like, I'm just a Christian who writes music. It's like, no, he wants to talk about Jesus in the most beautiful way that he possibly can as an artist.
That definitely comes through.
Yeah.
And I liked, when I came back around Christianity, Caedmon's Call.
Oh.
Big fan of Caedmon's Call.
It's actually, we could probably do an entire podcast on Caedmon's Call alone.
We should do that. I love Caedmon's Call.
I got saved at 15, and that was at like right as Caedmon's Call was up the hill toward their peak. And so as a guitar player, so I learned to play guitar to impress a girl, and then
very common.
Jesus saved me, and he also saved my guitar playing. But I came to maturity, or I came to Christ at the height of this Caedmon's Call era, and it happened to be at the same time I was burgeoning as a guitar player, and it was like the perfect storm that has God used. I mean, in all seriousness, I'm the guitar player that I am now because I spent hours and hours learning to fingerpick and play Caedmon's Call songs.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Caedmon's Call.
Absolutely.
Because now we have a wonderful guitar playing worship leader. The sadly, the story of Derek Webb, of course, is well known.
It's heartbreaking.
Enjoyed his stuff a lot too, coming around Mockingbird and all of that.
Yeah,
still think it's
huge
good.
Derek Webb fan.
So one of the things though that I noticed was that there were Christian songs that had lyrics that seemed substantial and meaningful to me, and other songs that did not.
Well, they were called the JPMs.
Okay.
So you had and I think again we can draw this dichotomy between those who were just in the Christian music industry to be in the Christian music industry, and genuine artists who were trying to live out their lives in a genuine way that reflected Christ and included their artistry. And so, I mean, this was a known. I'm pretty sure Derek Webb was the one talking about this, that they would hear from record label executives, you need more JPMs, which is Jesus per minute. And they had it broken down statistically that the songs that did the best mentioned Jesus in some way, shape, or form more per minute than other songs.
Well, we do like hearing about Jesus.
And again, I'm not saying that that's not...
But that's pretty manipulative.
Exactly. There's not a genuine desire. It's like, I want to worship Jesus with my song. It's, we need to cram the word Jesus into the song as many times as possible so that it makes more money on the radio.
Legitimizes it in people's minds as like a real Christian song.
Oh, this must be a really genuine and deep song.
Yeah.
Like, no, the lyrics are actually quite trite. They just kind of threw Jesus in instead of my girlfriend in a lot of these. I mean, you take Jesus out of so many popular Christian songs, and you would not be able to discern that this was a song about God or Jesus in any shape. There's no theological depth whatsoever.
Yeah. I never moved toward the Christian pop music side of things, but I'm not a pop music fan, so that's not fair.
Sure.
I don't have much to say about that world. But what I did, because a lot of the music I listen to now, well, it's not pop music, and most of it's not Christian, actually.
Yeah,
specifically.
Right.
But I did begin to fall in love with worship music and with hymns, which I listen to a lot of that. When I say I listen to Christian music, I mean basically hymns and modern worship songs. Yes. But I also found that there were worship songs I had trouble singing and feeling like it meant much of anything.
Right.
I started leading worship at a evangelical free church, and of course, started doing the songs I just started doing the songs that we were currently singing, and it left me a bit. I enjoyed the music part of it,
right?
But when we were singing, for instance, and if you're listening, this is your favorite song, I'm sorry. But for me, this was a hard one. Yes, 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 Lord. Yes, 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 amen.
I let it all the time.
Yeah, I did before too. But I just, this is like really repetitive and it doesn't seem very meaningful to me. And then I started discovering like the Gettys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Stuart Townend.
In Christ Alone.
The Cooks.
Yeah. Or meaningful hymns. There were some hymn projects where there were some people that were putting together some really nice remakes of hymns.
Even the Passion Project.
Passion stuff, which I didn't grow up with hymns, so a lot of them were new to me.
Okay.
And it was so powerful. The words I was singing were so powerful. I couldn't help but feel this sincere sense of worship and gratefulness to God while I was singing those songs in a way that I wasn't experiencing with other songs.
Yeah.
And it was then that I began to think about there are worship songs and then there are worship songs.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I guess you would have avoided in the 90s was there was almost a battle within at least the little church that I was a part of. And I wouldn't even call it a battle.
The worship wars?
There was a tension between what they would call choruses, which would be like modern worship songs, and hymns.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we do too many choruses. We don't do enough hymns.
Yeah.
And if you do the hymns, you have to do them traditionally. You can't musically alter the arrangement or something like that. And so there was, it was almost like, well, do we need to have two services, or do we save the choruses for just when the youth meet? Whereas
they had two different kinds of services at the church we were at. The traditional.
Yeah, they did away with that though
sort of
when I
orchestra.
started. They did initially. They had like the early service and then the later service, but then they combined. But yeah, they did have the traditional service and then the contemporary service
for the young people.
Whereas there's a church out on it's West Hanover, I think. We drive by it all the time, and they have it listed. And I don't know the heart of the pastor, and I don't know the church, but they have traditional worship, and this is on their board as we drive by, it flashes, and then they have casual worship. And so I make the joke with my wife all the time as we drive by. It's like, it's just, real casual. It's like, God, I know you're great and everything. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Let's keep it casual here.
Let's keep it nice and cash. But I also discovered in the middle of this sort of process of discovering what I found helpful and good in the Christian music world was that there were songs that I could specifically go to that would sort of sustain me in different kinds of seasons.
Absolutely.
I remember going through, both of my parents have died. My dad died just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and things like that. A lot of death in my family, and discovering, like, for instance, Sovereign Grace Music had an album years ago called Valley of Vision.
Okay.
That was just full of songs that very specifically spoke about how God meets us in the valleys, in the darkness, in our sadness.
Come Weary Saints was that for me.
Great as well. And then there's many songs like that. But the older I get, and the more that I think about it, and as a pastor, when I think about caring for people, the more I have a conviction about seeking to find and sing and lead with substantial songs.
Absolutely.
And songs that actually begin to shape the way that we think about God and reality. So going back to that idea of soundtracks that fuel, inclination, like when I was a kid and with Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and I just picked up Pearl Jam 10 on vinyl with a gift card. I know you'll be happy about that because you can't stand my snobbery.
The hipsterness is just oozing.
Dude, come over to the vinyl side. But a conviction that if we sing songs about God that are shallow and ultimately are not specifically biblical about who God is, about his promises, about what God has done for us in Christ, about the gospel, about the cross, over time, I think one can begin to have a shallower view of God. And that won't serve one in the middle of crisis and sorrow and suffering, which are just normal parts of this world. I was in a worship service at a local church not that long ago, and I didn't know any of the songs they were singing. That doesn't mean much at all, actually. I'm not up on what's hot. And
it's hot in the streets.
Yeah, and I imagine that some of these songs are very meaningful, but for me, it was difficult for me to find it meaningful to sing some of the lines of the songs because they were so
vacuous.
Well, yeah, I don't want to be mean. They just didn't mean much.
Yeah.
So they were sort of about God, but when my soul needs fortifying, I'd like specific truth to be
Hearty
communicated
meal instead of a
Yeah, there's a line. This is probably like a real popular song or something. There was a line that my wife and I sort of looked at each other and we were like, don't really feel like singing this line. Where the song, it just repeated over and over again. There's nothing better than this here right now. And there's nothing better than this. I don't remember how this. I'm not going to sing it.
Moment right
and
now?
I just thought,
this isn't true.
really? I can't really sing. Like I can think of like about 15 things off the top of my head.
The top of my head.
That's better than this actual thing right now. I mean, I love singing.
Yeah.
I'm a singer. I'm loud and I yell and do all that. But well, how do you think through that as a worship leader when it comes to choosing songs that edify, and actually help form people spiritually?
And so I think this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is how skill, and I guess you could expand that to good music. So something can be very catchy, very good in its melody, in its rhythm, in the lick or the lead or whatever the case might be, which will kind of get the foot in the door for lyrics that have no depth, that like on their own aren't going to stand up. And I'm not saying that every single song that is lyrically rich, or maybe not lyrically as strong, can't be supported and uplifted by good music. But
or that a simple line can't be wonderfully edifying.
Meaningful, absolutely. Yeah. But one of the things that I know, and this goes back to when I first started coming to Living Hope, the worship leader was Don Harper. And one of the caveats for him was, if you wanted to introduce a song, and I think this came from pastors at the time, he didn't want you to send the song. He wanted you to send the lyrics, just the lyrics alone.
Right.
And I think you've done this with me before too. It's like, can you just, like, what are you pull the lyrics up. I'm like, hey, I want to do this song. And we'll just pull the lyrics up, and we'll look just at the lyrics to evaluate how strong the song is lyrically. And then if it's singable and, the melody is beautiful, then we'll move forward with it. But to go backwards with that, if you like, I really love the melody of this song.
Yeah.
It can kind of, I don't know, skew your thinking about the lyrics. Like, the lyrics aren't that strong, but this melody is so good.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful that you try to, because music attaches itself and influences our emotions so strongly. And be like, I have such a strong and good emotional response to how that lyric soars, that one line soars about the glory of God. But then you look at the verse and it's pretty weak and there's not much there. And so, but you want to do the song because of that emotional response instead of, thinking through objectively, thinking through critically. Yeah, but the lyrics on the verse they're subpar at best.
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of think in terms of, what are the kind of songs that somebody might sing on their deathbed?
Yeah, oh yeah.
What will matter? What will be meaningful? It's interesting. There was a study I saw that was recently showed that music actually are one of the last things often to stay with a person with Alzheimer's.
There's a video. If you want to go on YouTube, there's a really amazing video of a guy who is almost catatonic in his Alzheimer's dementia. And they put earphones on him and play music from when he was young. And he comes alive and is singing and animated. Yeah. And he stays in that state for several minutes even after they take the music away, but then slowly reverts back to his catatonic, unresponsive state. It was pretty incredible. It brought tears to my eyes. It was very, very
Sounds incredible.
Powerful. It was really cool.
And so even if I don't have Alzheimer's or whatever, but when I'm facing the day of death and I'm going to go be with the Lord, what am I going to find most meaningful?
Right.
It's going to be specific truth about God.
Yeah.
And what God has revealed in Scripture about his character and his promises and the grace of Jesus and the realities of his cross. And there's a song that we started singing. It's the Andrew Peterson song, Is He Worthy? And the reason I love the song so much is because it very specifically is it good to remind ourselves of this. Yes. And what we're reminding ourselves through singing that song about the reality that new creation is coming.
Yeah.
Like specifically
Right.
that Jesus is going to come back and bring with him a new earth, a new creation that we're going to live in forever. Suffering will be done away with. And there's specifics to it that I feel like I can hang on to.
Absolutely.
And I have trouble singing that song.
Oh, yeah.
I think the music's beautiful to it. I love listening to it. But as I'm trying to sing it, which we have done a bunch at church, sometimes it's very difficult because I'm so blown away by what I'm singing, what's true about my future in Christ.
Yeah.
And so those sorts of things inform how I want people at Living Hope at the church I pastor to experience as well.
Yeah. Well, with Andrew Peterson in specific, I mean, he's a couple years older than I am, but as he would write songs about his family life and where he was at, so when he got married, when he started having kids, and
dancing in the minefield.
Oh my goodness! I mean, he wrote a song to his son. He wrote a song. He's written songs to his daughters, and I listened to that, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to say to my son. Like, I mean, just drenched in the gospel, drenched in a desire to love God and to love the people around him.
Yeah.
And it's always been wonderful.
So I am in no way interested in or trying to regulate what people find personally edifying in their personal lives as they work their way through a week. It could be all manner of different kinds of worship music, for instance. And I'm not interested in policing that or criticizing people for having meaningful experiences with God. But the way I think about it as a pastor when we get together on Sunday mornings, as I've said many times publicly, we're not just, we had with adults and kids, we had like 330 on Sunday. So we're not 300 people who happen to all be in the same room while we're all having a me and Jesus moment.
Right, exactly.
Like it's not just like, well, we're all having our private me and Jesus moment, and we just happen to be in the same room together.
Well, I think even the scriptures would speak against that, talking about when Paul says, when you gather, sing to each other.
Yeah, Colossians.
Psalms, spiritual songs.
Says worship is not something that we don't just do to God, but towards each other as well. But the songs we choose to sing, because sometimes I think people might wonder, where such and such a very popular song? And we're not out to criticize that song per se. I think there are songs that are worth criticizing.
Sure.
But I'm or that if somebody enjoys that, in the car ride on the way to church. But we want to make sure, the pastors of Living Hope want to make sure that as much as possible, as all these people are in the same room together singing, that we're like-minded.
Right.
That we're all thinking about the same truths of God, and singing to God from those truths and worshiping him for who he is in truth. And so we're having, and there's a lot of joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of tears and in the middle of all of it, the subjective feeling of it.
Yeah.
But it's rooted in an objective, like-minded pursuit of God, so that we're not, so if I look around, there's certain songs that can be sung that I think can be personally edifying in your car on the way to work or whatever, because you're sincerely singing to the Lord. But in a corporate setting, it could be that there's a bunch of different people thinking about radically different things because the lyrics lend themselves to a vagueness.
Right. It's not a specificity that gathers us together. It's a generalness that could be applied to 1,000 different things.
Yeah. Well, there's much more that could be said about this.
This might be part one. Maybe label this part one.
Well, how about this? Why don't we end with some suggestions for theologically informed, theologically rich songs that are also singable, or groups that make songs like this, where that are also singable and have good musicianship. I've certainly heard songs that perhaps have very truthful biblical lyrics that I don't sound that great to me. So that's not the only only caveat. It's about there's skill in crafting a song that also edifies and serves as sort of a vehicle for these truths to be delivered and sung. So here I
What?
got a couple. There's a bunch, but I would say City of Light.
Yeah, they've been putting out some really
City
good
of Light
stuff.
is sort of like a more theologically informed Hillsong.
Yeah.
They're from Australia.
Yeah.
They have several songs that we sing
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean, they're guaranteed to cause the spiritual temperature of the room to rise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yet not I, but Christ in me, for instance.
Yeah.
I would recommend heartily they're on Spotify, wherever.
They're on
City of Light.
free Amazon Prime.
It's all one word. If you haven't heard them before.
They have a ton of stuff on YouTube as well.
Yeah, really wonderful, theologically rich, singable, skillful.
Yeah, musically beautiful.
Music. Yeah, musically beautiful. Why don't
Yeah,
you?
sure.
What would you say?
Well, I mean, we've mentioned them, I think, several times already in the podcast. But I mean, you pick yourself up any Andrew Peterson album, you're going to be in for a treat.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. I mean, I still have a very soft spot for "Carried Along," which was his first studio album. But my favorite album is probably "The Burning Edge of Dawn," which I think is 3 albums ago. There's just beautiful songs about family life, beautiful songs about anticipating God's return, and the disconnect with the suffering that we experience in this world and the hope that we have in Christ. It's for my money, you don't get any better.
Yeah, great stuff. Matt Boswell.
Yeah. Who does he co-write with?
Matt Papa.
Papa, yeah.
Yeah,
The
His
Mats.
Mercy is More.
Yeah.
Come Behold the Wondrous Mystery.
Yeah.
There's modern hymns that are
Beautiful.
spectacular. If you can check them out, they're on YouTube.
You read those
and
lyrics
Spotify.
and you're like, this is so good, and it's so singable too.
So singable. Of course, the Gettys. They just keep
Keith and
churning out
Kristen,
music. I mean,
Hit machines.
what a gift to the church the Gettys
Oh,
are.
absolutely.
Uh,
Stuart Townend co-writes a lot with them.
Yeah, and what they provided for the church. And, as Homer's, as a Sovereign Grace guy, Sovereign Grace music
Yeah.
makes wonderful albums. And I think
For
my
sure.
favorite one by them, I would say so far over the years, is Prayers of the Saints. So if you've never listened to Prayers of the Saints,
Sons and Daughters, I think for me is
it's a good one. There's a
is
bunch
one
of
of
good
my
ones.
favorite.
Prayers of the Saints, for me, that's like the ultimate album to create vocabulary for how to navigate through the seasons and trials of life. I mean, it's pretty much any kind of situation you're in. There's a song that's a prayer on that album that's appropriate. We started doing "O God of Mercy, Hear Our Plea,"
this month,
which is I think a good song
absolutely,
that speaks to lament.
Yeah.
And sorrow and crying out to God for His mercy, which is, of course, always appropriate.
Absolutely. A band that I just discovered in the last couple weeks, and I think I was talking to them about them, the Grey Havens.
Yeah.
They're on Amazon Prime. Their albums are. It's a married couple out of Chicago, or Illinois, I think. Somewhere near Chicago, I think. But they have some very beautiful, they write beautiful music, but it's all very, very biblically informed. And like they write these almost allegorical stories about the gospel.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful song called "She Waits," which is, it's all about creation. It's from Romans 8 about creation waiting for the revealing of the glory of the sons of God to be released from the captivity that, there's, creation is subjugated to sin just like we are.
Yeah.
And it longs for the revealing of the sons of God because then it'll be set free from the bondage to sin as well. It's like, man, you wouldn't think you could write a beautiful ballad about the earth longing for redemption just like we do.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. But
that sounds wonderful.
That's just one example.
I'm going to break out on Oldie But a Goodie, which is, of course, most people have heard of Indelible Grace.
Right.
They're sort of OGs when it comes to modernizing classic hymns.
Oh, yeah.
But they had an album a number of years ago called The Hymn Sing, live at the Ryman in Nashville.
Okay. And that's always been just a roving group of.
It's a collective,
musicians.
different, came out actually 10 years ago.
When did we have them in? We had Indelible Grace.
It was called Indelible Grace. It was really just Matthew Smith and a few people
okay.
with it, and that was nice. But the Hymn Sing by Indelible Grace has wonderful songs.
Yeah.
But they jam. I mean, it's
musically very talented.
Musically, it's another level.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of energy. And there are some very meaningful hymns on there that include when you want to jump up and down and for joy, and when you're going through the biggest nightmare of your life, you can find music for all of that.
Yeah.
On the hymn sing. I commend that to you. I'm going to go back and listen. I haven't listened to that for a while.
I'll have to break it out.
Really good. All right. Hey, it's good to be back with you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's good to be back.
Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
See you, Tyler.
See you, Ben.
Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit subscribe wherever you get this podcast, and then you'll be updated when there's new content, which I'm aiming to put some more up here very shortly. So thanks to Tyler for joining me for another conversation, and thank you to Calluna Labs, my brother Gabriel, for the music on this podcast. You can find Calluna Labs on Bandcamp and Spotify. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you next time right here on this podcast. Bye for now.